Is everybody having fun? Excellent, excellent. So good to see so many of you still here, which is much appreciated. So get ready for more Now Forum. We're about to hear from one of our newer clients, the University of Melbourne. They've got a great story to tell. A quick reminder, if you could, to think about the feedback application, the survey application. We will be drawing those prizes later in the day, an Apple iWatch and an iPad mini. Just before I bring up Byron and his secret weapon, Chris, I am going to play for you a short video just to introduce the University of Melbourne story. So if we could roll the tape on that one, please.
Hi, I'm Byron Collins, Executive Director, Infrastructure Services and Chief Technology Officer at the University of Melbourne. The University of Melbourne is Australia's second oldest university. We have over 50,000 students, over 10,000 staff. We are ranked number 1 in Australia by the Times Higher Education Index. University Services has 9 portfolios, and ServiceNow was selected as the technology platform that we would use to standardise the way we manage services across those 9 portfolios, with the view to having common service management practices to enable more efficient management and a more customer-oriented approach to delivering services. To date, the university's transformation is running to track. We've successfully implemented replacement of our remedy solution using the ServiceNow platform. Aside from implementing a number of the out-of-the-box applications, the university is also in the process of developing a number of custom-built applications for use. One of the applications we developed in the ServiceNow platform was automation of our casual contracting process. Implementation of that solution has enabled us to reduce the processing time from above 21 days per contract down to less than 5, whilst simultaneously enabling us to reduce the number of FTEs involved in the process from 6 to 4. The improvement in processing times around casual contracts enabled our academic community to focus on what they're ultimately employed to do, which is teaching our students and engaging in their research activities rather than processing paper. ServiceNow actually gives them an easy-to-use, any-device approach, which really lets them lodge their service request wherever they are at whatever time of day they're looking to do it.
Okay, excellent. I think you're going to enjoy this story. So without further ado, please muster all of your post-lunch energy to welcome to the stage Byron Collins, Executive Director and Chief Technology Officer at the University of Melbourne, and his secret weapon, Chris van der Weyden.
Thanks, David. I'm Byron Collins, CTO at the University of Melbourne, and Chris and I are going to take you through, over the next half hour, the journey that the university has been going through over the last 12 months or so in implementing service management across a range of portfolios in the organisation. Now, I should say I do have a number of fact checkers in the room, unlike Donald Trump in one of his rallies, so I will not be saying anything that is untrue this afternoon. He's got better hair than me too. So, the university. Many of you will be familiar with the University of Melbourne, but just by way of background before we get into our journey. The university was founded in 1853. It is Melbourne's oldest university. We have over 50,000 students currently enrolled. We have an unusual mix of students at the University of Melbourne. Roughly 35% of our students are overseas students, and roughly 40% are studying postgraduate courses, either PhDs, masters and so forth. That makes us very unique in an Australian context, not so unique in a global context, but we are very highly ranked in terms of global indices and so forth. The second major arm of our activity is obviously our research activity. We have approximately $400 million a year in research funding coming into the organisation. We engage in research across STEM faculties, HAS faculties, sorry, that just means science, technology, engineering, medicine, humanities and social sciences. And as I said, about 40% of our students are engaged in postgraduate work. For those of you that have had a chance to get out and about around Melbourne, you may have noticed some installations at some of the tram stops. I think there's about 15 at the moment that are publicising, made possible by Melbourne is the Cap Line, some of our research activities, which range from using drone technology to improve the quality and yield of vineyards, something near and dear to my heart, through to giving robots a human touch. But if you get the chance, I'd highly recommend you having a look at one of the installations. I'm told they're almost break-proof. Now, in terms of how we got into the ServiceNow environment, I joined the organisation just over 2 years ago. At the time, the organisation was going through what was called internally the implementation of the Melbourne operating model. And essentially what that meant was we were moving from an environment where our 10 faculties, our central support areas were being split into 3 large groups essentially. The organisation was essentially creating a shared services entity called University Services, which would come to have about 1,600 employees across 9 portfolios, which I'll talk about in a moment. The 10 academic divisions and a very small head office, which is the Chancellery, responsible largely for strategy, leading all of the implementation, operational support and delivery of services to the University Services operation. Those 9 portfolios are shown on the screen. You'll notice that information technology is not listed there. The reason for that is information technology sits in infrastructure services, which is actually the portfolio I'm responsible for in my day job. But in essence, the portfolios break down in terms of those that provide services directly to students and academics, which is the Academic Services Division. My team, which manages all of the bricks and clicks, if you like. We run all of the buildings. There's over 350 buildings at the University of Melbourne, and all of the virtual environments, all of the IT environment is run from an operational delivery by Infrastructure Services. When I joined the organisation, part of that restructure I talked about was very much aimed at delivering some efficiency dividends to be reinvested into the core research activities of the organisation. So roughly $70 million was to be saved across the organisation, which was then used to reinvest in the creation of new research positions, endowments and so forth. As part of that restructure, there was a desire to automate processes where possible. And at the time, the IT team had recognised that its service desk, which was running Remedy, needed to replace that solution for a variety of reasons. For those of you that are using Remedy, you may well know what those reasons are. We, at the time, had a preconceived view of what the solution for that was. We actually were trialling a piece of software at the time. However, as we got into the selection process, it pretty quickly dawned on us that there was a much bigger play available to us, and that was to not just look at automating services across the IT function, the traditional ITSM space, but it was to look across the 9 portfolios shown on the screen and set off on the journey to basically deliver standardised service management processes and activities across those 9 portfolios. And that process ultimately led to the selection of ServiceNow as our service automation platform. So in terms of how we envisioned this, basically we've taken a view that there should be one physical channel, one telephony channel and one online channel used by University Services across the 9 portfolios to provide services to staff. And so what we've done to date has been setting off on that journey to build the underlying processes to make sure that that vision is ultimately going to be delivered. So the common service management processes that are shown on the screen started off with the traditional IT service processes. One of the things that Chris will talk about in a moment that we quickly discovered as soon as we went into HR and finance is the terminology differences are distinct. And so talking about incident management, break fix and so forth aren't necessarily going to endear you to your colleagues in those functional areas. And so we quickly did a bit of a backflip and took a softly approach, and we're actually using very different terminology now when we go and talk about what those processes are. But underneath the covers, the processes are essentially the same. So as I said, ServiceNow, but in the end, will sit across all of those portfolios, delivering all of those functions. And ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is really was encapsulated by one of the slides that Dave Wright used this morning, and that is, yes, there is an efficiency dividend that we're ultimately trying to maintain and deliver for the university, but ultimately what we're about is improving the user experience, initially of our staff, but ultimately our students as well, and to enable us to actually get improvements in those processes to market, so to speak, far more quickly than would have been the case in the past. And so we went live with a subset of service management practices in the IT space about 10 weeks after we started the project. I think that was probably a record for the University of Melbourne. I've only been there 2 years, so that is a fact I cannot verify. And since then, we've delivered a number of iterations, including next week we'll be going live with the latest Helsinki update to our staff portal. So I think that's probably an appropriate time for me to hand over to Chris. He'll talk you through in more detail what it is we've done, what processes we've automated, and how we're looking to take the program of work forward. As I say, this is very much a journey for the organisation. We didn't set out with this as being a one-year project. We always knew that we would start with the high transactional volume areas, being IT, HR and finance next, and then we're progressing to the other areas, and we're bang on track. And to the point where, as we get into next year, we'll be tackling the next thing that's near and dear to my heart, which is facilities management, given responsibility for those 350 buildings I talked about rests with me.
Thanks, Byron. Now, as Byron indicated, the process of implementing ServiceNow was probably a record for the IT department in terms of implementing a large-scale system like ServiceNow. It was done over a 16-week period. We started in about August. We delivered in December 8, I think. So we're coming up for our first birthday very, very soon. Perhaps just a little bit of a backstory about how effective that was. Our previous system, I think Byron alluded to that, when I joined the university 5 years ago, it was being upgraded and it was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. Well, 18 months it took to get an upgrade, and then we replaced it 2 years later. So probably wasn't the most effective way forward. But if I can just talk about the value that ServiceNow is playing across the service management portfolios, and I do apologise for the slide. I can see that the writing that's supposed to be white on there has come out black, so it's probably hard for you to see. But the nine pillars, if you like, on the left of the screen relate to what I would call service management or service catalogue areas or service modules, and the others on the right are the custom developed applications. And if I just click forward, you can see that the green ticks are the areas in which we have been successful and delivered. You've got the work in progress sign that you haven't seen on a website for a long time now. And you've got the 17 where we've got forward schedule of work for 2017. But I just want to go from the bottom up and just explain each of these areas. You can see from the service management pillars, IT and finance, they're the big transaction areas for the university. And as Byron indicated, it was very difficult for us to engage with finance and use our normal IT service management speak. The translation didn't work very well. But so what we did was, again, having engaged with finance, we've essentially converted them from about using 32 shared mailboxes, Excel worksheets, post-it notes, and sort of noting systems into a single inquiry system. And even though they're still on the maturity journey, they're so much better and so much more effective than they were under their previous system. And we're starting to get carriage. And it does go back to, I think, the point that David Oakley mentioned in his presentation in the morning. And this is a leadership role that IT can take into an organisation. Instead of just leading the IT conversation, now there's an opportunity for IT to lead the service management conversation across the organisation. Because at the University of Melbourne, we're talking about service management across all of the professional services. So as you can see from the pillars, it's IT, finance, HR, campus, which is facilities, legal and risk, external engagement or marketing, academic services, which is the student services, as well as research. And half the University of Melbourne, of a $2 billion organisation, is research, and it really does, it's really important to get the service provision of the administration of our research endeavour really correct. So you can see also there that we maintain a service catalogue. We also have done a lot of work around trying to get call diversion. So we've implemented significant effort into knowledge-based support, as well as our social Q&A function that was really improved in Helsinki. And we work with an external consultancy with specialisation in this area to really help us implement that, and we went live with that probably a few weeks ago. We're getting some carriage, and we hope that this will improve our ability to call divert, and I'll cover that off a little bit later. As well as the service portal, and again, Byron indicated that Helsinki was a real groundbreaking piece for us, and it really improved the user interface and the user experience of that. A little bit more about the service management platform. So, as I said, it's been in operation now for just under 12 months. 85,000 tickets. The 22,000 self-service tickets, when we implemented ServiceNow, less than 5% of our tickets were automated or self-service, because the user experience in that area was appalling. We haven't really promoted the self-service capability very much across the university. We wanted to make sure we got to a good service portal that we were comfortable with first, but already we're about 20% self-service. Now we have aspirations of driving it up to 50% over the next 18 months, so we're well on our way. Penetration in terms of service staff using ServiceNow, about 740 queues, and also Net Promoter Score. Now, I don't know if many organisations in the room use Net Promoter Score, but we're pretty chuffed about the type of feedback that we're getting in relation to the service experience that people are getting through ServiceNow, whether it be through the voice channel, or whether it be online, or whether it be walk up face to face. All of those channels are managed through ServiceNow ticketing, and as I said, 81 is a very healthy score. I think according to the literature, if you get a score above 50, you're doing well. Some industries score 0. If they don't get a negative score, they're in front. I think that's the telcos. Any telcos in the room? Sorry about that. That's what the literature says. I'm just quoting other people. Ready to Work is one of our custom developed applications, and that's been operational for 4 months. Just under 10,000 casual contracts. So you can see the velocity that we've been able to achieve with the product. Generally speaking, it took 21 days of time duration to process a casual contract, and usually people were working for weeks before their contract was actually in the system, so we had a real trouble paying people, and it was really a nightmare. And we had a lot of thrashing. So a lot of people would be, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Have you got my contract yet? I need paid. You know, they've got bills to pay. We've taken all of that out, so reduced the time to process a casual contract from 21 to 4 days. A lot of the thrashing in terms of calls through the centre have gone, and we simplified the process. So an amazing improvement. And again, just part of that custom development capability in Create Now. That's what the Staff Services portal looks like, and I did note the conversation that I think Robert had about where you put the search tab. It's gone into a couple of different places on ours as well, but we've tried to keep it really clean. You can see the service portfolios that we've got on the new portal, and essentially that's the landing page. That's our IT page, and we've tried to keep it really clean. So is there something broken? Do you want to request a service, or do you want to learn something? The learn something takes you into the knowledge base as well as the social Q&A, which is that community of practice. It works really well at a university, and I imagine it would work in a lot of other organisations. We're looking for a greater amount of call diversion away from the expensive voice channel, pushing them into both online, but also using communities of practice across the organisation, where even the service centre is not going to have the required expertise to solve the problem. So again, we draw on the expertise across the community. That's the HR page. Again, one of the other service module areas. You can see that manage casual contracts is there, so we're using this landing page for HR to launch into one of these custom developed applications. Request something is essentially your inquiry management, and then you've got the human resources page. This points to the fact that we're using ServiceNow as a stepping stone between the old practice of using a staff portal, which was largely brochureware with some web forms that would be filled in with, just dumb web forms. We're still in a halfway house. So we're using ServiceNow to bridge that time. Over a period of time, we won't need to go back to the old service staff portal, but at the moment, you can't arrive all at once. So a little bit more about casual contracts. Getting a casual contract wasn't a very welcoming experience, and this is the big sign above the main Priestley buildings when you walk in off Grattan Street. So we tried to make casual contracts a much more welcoming experience. So we created a lot of embedded information that pulled through the systems of record, and I think that was referred to earlier in terms of the benefits from to ServiceNow if we can draw from systems of record, so that we can avoid people now having to re-enter data that is already there. It improves accuracy, it improves ease of access, and treats people with respect. Instead of treating them as if they've got to put everything in all over the shop. So this is a working screen. I decided not to go live in this presentation, especially drawing on Troy's experience this morning. I think that was probably a good decision. So that's our page for the hirers. The casual employee then immediately receives the letter of offer, which is embedded and automatically generated. So this used to have to be typed up manually previously. Now it's just automatically generated by ServiceNow as part of the process. It draws information out of our systems of record in HR, which is Oracle HR, and generates a letter of offer. When the staff member clicks on the letter of offer, it automatically goes back to the ServiceNow page, which allows them to be welcomed, but also to click through to the page where they get to fill out their piece of the work. And all of this can be done essentially in a matter of hours. So if somebody needs to be onboarded very quickly, often we have a subject which will only decide whether we run it or not based on student selections. So often the academic side of the business, especially in law or economics, where we hire people with specialised knowledge in law and business, the rate at which they need to be hired can be quite short. So onboarding is another specialist area. Again, another area of great concern for us. So what this area did, because a lot of expense had been put into getting integration into the casual contracts area, we were able to leverage all of that integration into the HR onboarding process. So this is every single new starter into the organisation goes through this process. It gives a dashboard to any manager in the organisation so they can see all of their onboarding processes, all of the staff members that are going through the process, and they can see the checklist, as you can see how many stages have gone through. There's also and again you can't see that, but the supervisor can also look at individual staff and see how the progress is going. This is what individual staff receive when they get their letter of offer. They come back through. We've got a nice video there from our Vice-Chancellor, essentially the university's CEO, as well as the pieces of work that they need to do to complete their onboarding. And then, of course, I've gone one for, can you bring that back please? That's it. So part of what we try to do for every starter, it used to be the service experience associated with onboarding in our organisation was often a week or two before all of the services that a staff member needed to make them fully productive were all in place. Sometimes we didn't even start giving them access to systems until sort of after lunchtime on the first day. So it was a lot of wasted productivity. I don't know what onboarding is like in a lot of organisations in the room, but we did it very badly at the university. Now the state is that by lunchtime on the first day, everybody has their PC, their email accounts are active before they start, so staff members can see their diary for their first day as part of the University of Melbourne 365 account. So all of these systems are all in place well before the staff member starts. So I think, it makes that a whole process of onboarding a much more welcoming experience, and it's all workflowed through ServiceNow capability. So that's covering off general IT service management, it's covering off the service modules well outside of IT, which is where we're extracting a lot of value, as well as our custom developed applications. Now what I wanted to do is hand back to Byron so we can sum it all up.
Thanks, Chris. The image is not meant to say that it's been a bumpy ride. The image is meant to say, hold on for the ride. Because to date, our ServiceNow implementation has been going at a rate of knots, certainly compared to historic practice in the university. In terms of lessons learned as part of that journey, the first thing I'd point out, and it's kind of common sense in a way, but that is, the thing that's been most important from our journey so far is being able to get the executive team on board with the vision that we set up at the start. I talked about wanting to make sure that we were putting services or service management across the 9 portfolios. As it happened, I've been talking about that for some time, but it really didn't click until this event last year up at Luna Park, where my boss came along and saw Dave Wright talk. And Dave used a slightly different deck last year, but Paul came away with a clear understanding from that day as to exactly what it was we were trying to achieve. And from that point on, we've found it relatively simple to get my colleagues on board in those other 8 different portfolios. So having a vision and obviously getting your executive stakeholder group on board is key to being able to move quickly. It's kind of a statement of the obvious, and it's almost program management 101, but I don't think you can underestimate the importance of that. I guess the other advantage that we've had at the university is that because of the restructure, because all the shared services are under one line of control, we actually don't have to go begging, persuading, cajoling colleagues in other parts of the operation to come on board. They've been with us from the start, they've broadly seen what we're trying to do, and they're enthusiastic about getting on board, because in the end, part of what we're trying to achieve is the ability to move people around within university services, and part of that relies on having a common language, a common framework of doing things. The second thing I'd say, and this is again a huge issue, and has been a huge issue historically at the university, and again it was talked about this morning, is to focus ruthlessly on the user experience, particularly where you've got handoffs from a system perspective in your environment. And so one of the things that we've grappled with, and it's not a reflection on ServiceNow at all, their product has actually delivered a user experience far and away better than anything we'd had previously, but we've had handoffs between our old intranet, for example, onto ServiceNow. That hasn't always been the smoothest of pass-throughs, and we've had to work pretty hard on making sure that content is put in one place, it's visible in another, and that from a user perspective, they get to where they're trying to go with the minimum number of clicks possible. The third thing I'd say, and this was a bit of an unexpected surprise for me, is when we set off on the journey, we expected that we'd progressively move through IT, HR, finance, and we'd be using largely out-of-the-box function from ServiceNow. And that's kind of how it's transpired. What caught me by surprise was the enthusiasm for other parts of the business to develop in the ServiceNow environment. And so Chris took you through a couple of examples of those, but we are actually seeing colleagues in some of our research administration areas looking to develop workflows around ethics approvals and so forth. If you'd asked me 12 months ago, was that a likely thing, I would have sort of said you were crazy. But it has caught us by surprise, and it has meant from a program management perspective, we've had to run really fast to try and keep up with the demand. Now again, from my perspective, a good problem to have. I think in the old days in the University of Melbourne, it probably would have been met with a no, you can't. Whereas our approach has been very much to try and work with our colleagues in the business areas to deliver what they want as a means of trying to make the solution part and parcel of how we operate. The last thing I'd say before we finish is making sure when you start the journey, if you're intending to take things beyond a single line of business like IT, that you do try and take a long-term view in the way that you develop things like your knowledge management environment, your inquiry management workflows, because we have found that the way finance wants to do things can be slightly different to the way IT want to do them. And so long as you know that in advance, you can actually engineer the system in a way to facilitate that. We did have some issues early on, again, nothing to do with ServiceNow. This was an internal issue where some of our stakeholders didn't really quite understand how their processes worked, and in some cases, as Chris alluded to, we're relying on 30, 33, 34 shared mailboxes to facilitate work. When you actually go and try and automate that or bring it into an inquiry management solution, it actually forced some fairly significant rethinking on the part of that part of the business and caused us to actually have to make some design tweaks to the way we'd engineered the environment. So knowing that from the start actually helps making sure that you end up delivering a solution that can turn its hand to the various aspects of your businesses. So I think the key message I'd leave you with is that from a University of Melbourne perspective, the journey so far, and it is so far, has been going extremely well. If you'd asked me 12 months ago, would we be in a position where Remedy is now turned off? Kind of. I would have said, you're joking, but it is. If you'd asked me, would we be live with finance operations, some of the custom applications we've delivered, completely transformed ITSM onto the platform, and now getting into the heavy lifting around facilities, I would have said you were dreaming. And so, from my perspective, as the executive sponsor of this program, it's been a journey that's been a hell of a ride to date, and it's one that's going to keep on going in the next couple of years. So, from a UOM perspective, hopefully we've given you some insight into our journey, and I look forward to seeing some of you at the same function next year. So, thank you very much.